I never would have thought that the woman I loved with every fiber of my being was living a double life between strange sheets, while I, unaware, made her coffee every morning. My name is Giuseppe, and this is not just the story of a betrayal. It is the story of how, behind daily smiles and dinners in the living room, a forbidden passion can be hidden, lived in secret, with two men. I discovered it too late, but now I know everything, and I want to tell it. Sign up if you want to find out how dangerous desire can become. Until a few months ago, my life was like a well-oiled gear, stable, orderly, without hitches. I worked as a lawyer in a prestigious firm. I lived in a beautiful house just outside the city, and I had a wife, Irene, who I thought was my universe. Every morning began with the smell of coffee and the familiar sound of his words. We talked about our plans, about spending, about the future, as if everything was written, decided. In the evening, we found ourselves in front of the news, two cutlery moving in sync, as if we were truly one. But perfection sometimes is just the mask of apathy. And in that seemingly perfect mechanism, something began to jam. Irene, always punctual, always methodical, began to come home late. He spoke of extra tasks, of new and all-encompassing responsibilities. I believed it, or maybe I wanted to believe it. But his presence, so constant and reassuring, began to transform into absence, and inside me, a little suspicion began to form, silent, sneaky, but alive. Then came that evening. I remember perfectly the feeling of cold seeing her come home with an expression I didn't know on her face. His eyes avoided mine. His body seemed distant, mechanical in its movements. She tried to appear calm, but I felt that something was out of place, like a note out of place in a melody that I knew by heart. I watched her change in the bedroom. I noticed how he hid the phone, how he avoided the mirror, as if he didn't want to meet his own reflection. One evening, coming home, I noticed the light in our room on. I opened the door calmly and found her there, sitting on the bed, immersed in her thoughts, unaware of my presence. I approached in silence, and only then I saw that he was holding a letter. He tried to hide it, but it was no use. I took it. It was a love letter. Every word tasted of desire, of flesh, of barely held back passion. Written by a man, a certain Nick, a name I had never heard, but his handwriting spoke clearly. It wasn't just attraction. There were promises, shared memories, lived fantasies. Everything that I thought belonged only to us, she had given to someone else. He tried to explain, but his words shattered a truth that was already burning within me. The world we had built together was crumbling beneath my feet. His voice reached me muffled, distant. I could no longer tell what was real and what wasn't. My mind, however, wanted certainties, and so I decided to find out everything. I entrusted my questions to an old friend, an investigator. I told him every detail, every habit of Irene. Within a few days, he gave me a dossier. What I found inside made my hands tremble. Irene, she didn't cheat on me with just one man, but with two. Nick, a colleague from his office, and Sam, a personal trainer with an exuberant physicality who frequented the same gym as him. The evidence was irrefutable. Messages, photographs, intimate details about where, when, and how they met. Each image pierced me like a blade, the passionate kisses in the leaves of a park, the steamy texts he exchanged with Sam, and a reservation for a weekend in a place I didn't even know. Those images were raw, shameless. His body, his looks, his way of smiling. Everything that was once mine was now divided between two other men. I spent the following evenings in silence, in the dark, with the dossier before my eyes. I reassembled the pieces of a dirty, perverse puzzle that I had never imagined could belong to us. If something in you has moved listening to this story, then stay. Press sign up and let yourself be tempted again, one story at a time. I discovered that they had an apartment downtown, a hidden nest, a refuge where they left out morals, grades, my existence. There, they lived their passion without limits. It was more than a betrayal. It was a double life, a theater in which I had the role of the puppet, unaware, while they played at dressing up with freedom, sensuality, and secrets. And while I chased normality, they chased the thrill. But now that thrill was all mine, and it burned. I couldn't sleep that night, and it wasn't just insomnia. It was a weight in my chest, a tension that dug inside me. I felt that the moment had arrived. I had to face Irene, put an end to that charade that was wearing out my soul. I woke her up, cold as marble, without raising my voice. I showed her everything I knew, the evidence, the images, the lies he had constructed, and she broke. He didn't even try to deny it. Tears ran down her face as she spoke of that emptiness that devoured her, of our daily life that had become a cage. She told me how much she wanted to feel alive again, and that Nick and Sam had been her escape, her transgression, her forbidden spark. It burned me to listen to her. Every word was a blade. A few days later, I decided to confront Nick and Sam. It was a freezing December afternoon, the sky low and the wind cutting the skin. I found them in the cafe where they met with Irene, the same place I had learned to hate. I entered with a determined step, and when they saw me, they froze. No theatrical gestures, no attempts to escape, only silence. I looked them in the eyes, and they spoke to me without defending themselves, without apologizing too much. They recognized the mistake, the weakness, the desire that had dragged them into that clandestine relationship. And as much as I wanted to scream, hit them, destroy them, I understood that the responsibility was not only theirs. Irene had chosen to slip between those strange sheets, to chase emotions that he no longer felt with me. It had destroyed our home, our project, everything we had built. I felt the anger flowing over me like lava, but underneath there was only pain, a silent, deep, devastating pain. The separation was inevitable, but I didn't leave with empty pockets. We shared everything, every object, every euro, every piece of that shared life. But I kept my dignity and that new freedom that felt like revenge. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of signatures, cold meetings, sharp words, and heavy silences. Every time I saw her, I felt my heart ache. She was broken, yet I couldn't allow myself to fall apart. I had to come out with my head held high. I had to close that chapter, even if it left me with broken bones. I moved to a small apartment in the city, far from those memories soaked in sweat and lies. I changed jobs. I tried piece by piece to put together what was left of me. I didn't want Irene's betrayal to define my future, but I knew that the scars, those would stay with me. Always. I began attending a support group for those who, like me, had been hit from behind by those who swore eternal love. Every story heard was a reflection of my own. Every tear of others, a mirror of my pain. It was there that I really began to heal. I found people who understood me without having to explain. Friends who knew the shame of feeling betrayed and the secret desire to still feel the thrill of skin against skin, but without the poison of deception. Over time, I began to see things more clearly. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Even relationships that seem most solid can crumble under the weight of unspoken desires, stolen nights, fantasies that are consumed in hotels too anonymous to have a soul. A year after the separation, I found myself in the park where it all began. I had seen the first photos there, those images that took my breath away. The sun was setting. The leaves were blowing in a light breeze. I sat down on a bench and closed my eyes, and in that instant, I felt a new peace. It wasn't happiness. It was something deeper, a calm full of awareness. I had lost so much, but I was finding myself. If you want to receive new videos of the series, write, "I want the sequel," in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to receive a preview of future publications. Thank you.